we'll compile them and be able to share that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right then, so let's move on and listen to Onesmo Nunda, the mathematician who is now working for the church. This man teaches mathematics. I can't understand how he can teach such a difficult subject. He teaches mathematics. I had challenges with mathematics in school, and he teaches that in university, and he loves it, and he wants to go on and on. But now he also gives part of his time to work for the church in the development and social services or the diaconal ministries. So over to you, Onesmo Nunda. Unmute yourself and go ahead.
Thank you very much, dear Reverend Japhet, for this introduction. Dear beloved brothers and sisters, it is with a great honor and pleasure that I join you all in this Angola online conference, which theme, Mending the World, challenge us to give our contribution to create a better and more peaceful world. I speak to you on my capacity of Director General of DASEP, which is the Department of Social Assistance, Studies and Projects of the Evangelical Congregational Church in Angola, the social branch of IECA, and responsible for implementation of projects in the communities. So, I will speak to you in my perspective as a social and community actor. We live in an era challenged by the new coronavirus, which has forced all the governments and international institutions to be forced to change their way of life due to a virus or a small cellular organism that should be negligible to the human eye. This shows that no matter how great we are, if God does not protect us, we can be destroyed by a simple matter. The coronavirus pandemic is arguably the greatest challenge to humanity after the Second World War. As the crisis unfolds, different thoughts are going into our mind. By the initial look of the trends coming from the various parts of the world, one can easily figure out that it is an epidemic which has hit both the richest and the poorest countries. Obviously, poor countries are always the most vulnerable to the effects of the pandemic because their economies are very fragile, health systems are poor, and as a result, families are the ones who suffer most from lack of food, water, and medicines. There are already people in the remote areas of Angola dying of hunger. So, my dear brothers and sisters, mending the world is also talking about how the church can organize itself to help families to overcome the main needs that threaten their lives. For this reason, the church as a prophetic and a protective voice for the voiceless must be prepared to respond with concrete actions and reduce the vulnerability of families without any racial or religious discrimination. In the context of corrupt government systems and the dictators, for mending the world in the post-COVID era, we need to strategize a plan from now. And I underline some steps of this plan. The first step is an emergency response. The purpose of the emergency response is to satisfy the immediate and the basic needs of people who have survived from the disease, from the pandemic, or from the disaster. Create conditions to reduce additional suffering in the period immediately after the pandemic. Mobilizing communities of faith and using people's skills, time, and resources to create responsiveness. Understand that God speaks through individuals to convey wisdom and vision. In the book of Acts 11, verses from 19 to 30, if we go to the context, we can see that there was a great famine in the whole Mediterranean region, which especially affected Judea. There had been a prophet message that predicated famine, and the church in Antioch decided to send aid to the church of Judea. My second step is rehabilitation. Rehabilitation includes measures taken to rebuild a community once the emergency response phase is passed. Rehabilitation can mean many things, but for our context, rehabilitation, in addition to restoring basic services, is helping people to make a living back in a way that makes them less vulnerable to future disasters. This phase offers the opportunity to introduce new guidelines and produce procedures, and also the opportunity to increase cooperation in the community through the formation of self-help groups or cooperatives. This can create opportunities for new livelihoods so that people can make a living in a way less affected by threats or dangers. In the book of Nehemiah, chapter 1 to 4, we find a great example of rehabilitation. God called to lead the rebuilding of Jerusalem after the disaster of the invasion and conquest, which had taken place some 70 years earlier. Much of the city had been destroyed, including the protective walls. Nehemiah, a Jewish captive in Babylon, had achieved an important position in the king's palace. He asked the king for a permission to return to his city and extra resources to rebuild it. The king generously gave him letters to the local governors and an armed escort to protect him. Therefore, Nehemiah gives us good lessons about planning, organizing, how to motivate the community, how to deal with the opposition or constraints, and about the importance of prayer in the entire rehabilitation process. He showed us that rehabilitation is more than just physical reconstruction. There are also spiritual battles and the need to rebuild and reform unjust social structures, which often increase the suffering of poor people. The third step is mitigation of the calamities or disasters. There are many dangers or calamities that cannot be avoided. However, it is possible to take steps in advance to reduce the potential impact of hazards on a community so that the risk of a threat is reduced. Therefore, it is necessary that the churches identify within their organizations people with capacity to develop contingency plans. The fourth step is preparation. Preparation is the set of activities that must be developed to prepare society for the impacts of a danger or calamity. Felix Banda, a Zambian author, in his book, We Don't Just Become, presents an equation where he puts preparation as one of the keys to achieving success. And the question is, success is equal opportunity plus preparedness. So positioning strategically is absolutely essential for the organizations. When opportunities come, they must find us prepared. The pandemic teaches us, especially for our case in African countries, that religious institutions must invest in training the young people and bet on strong institutions capable of generating resources to sustain. What are we doing? Currently, the Evangelical Congregational Church in Angola, through DAZEP, is running projects strengthening young people on positive life, women, capacities of the families on how to cope with climate change, including smart agriculture, developing the communities through the churches, running 5 hospitals, and more than 70 schools. So, dear brothers and sisters, mending the world is to work together to make the world a little better than we found it, is to engage ourselves for the main problems of the poor and the richest countries of this world. Amen.
Wow, 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 wow. Thank you very much, Chef Onesimo. Muito obrigado. Thank you very much for that thought-provoking presentation. Indeed, taking us through all those necessary steps that DASEP has been doing, from disaster relief emergency through rehabilitation, mitigation, preparation, and all the various aspects of intervention. Thank you. Thank you. At this moment in time, we will listen. We'll go ahead and listen to Brother Marco from Global Ministries, just to give us an update. And then after that, we will turn to Jean from the Angola Memorial Scholarship Fund, also just to give us an update, and then we can have some conversations. Thank you very much, and over to you, Brother Marco.
No, thank you very much, Reverend Japheth, and to the UCC Canada for organizing our meeting. I'm going to try to be brief. I have prepared some remarks given the assignment that I've been given to just give an update from Global Ministries and to share about our partnerships in Africa with a focus on the ways that we partner with IECA and the Council of Churches in Angola. As many of you know, Global Ministries is the joint mission and witness of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, and the United Church of Christ. Both churches are in full communion with the United Church of Canada. The Disciples of Christ and the United Church of Christ have worked closely in overseas missions dating back to the 1960s, but formalized our relationship in 1996 to form what we know today as Global Ministries. Like the ministries and organizations you are part of, coronavirus has impacted how we organize our work and has fully thrusted us into a virtual office. United Church of Christ and the Christian Church Disciples of Christ national and general offices have been closed since mid-March. But a more accurate description is the buildings have been closed because the office's work has continued while we're sheltering in place at home. We continue to recruit and process individuals who have a passion for God's mission in the world and feel a call to serve overseas with partner organizations. All of our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, are active. Some of you may have participated in the weekly area executive regional COVID-19 updates in May on Facebook Live. They're still available if you missed them. We also posted videos from partners sharing their experiences with COVID-19 and ways Global Ministries is accompanying them during the global pandemic. Our website, we maintain a section dedicated to COVID-19 partner updates. Area executives also prepared a justice-based document entitled COVID-19 Indiscriminate Disease, Unequal Vulnerability, and Inspiration for Human Resilience. You can also find that document on our website. We are pleased that we continue to receive requests for churches and fellowship groups about people-to-people pilgrimage opportunities or mission trips. Although we have suspended all overseas travel for the year, our creative staff and the mission engagement and people-to-people pilgrimage offices have created a virtual overseas experience to Cuba. They're in the process of completing virtual pilgrimages to Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Colombia. We're also having discussions about a virtual trip to Africa. I hope to announce the first virtual pilgrimage to Africa in a couple of weeks. Many of our mission co-workers have returned to the United States to complete home assignments during this global pandemic. They are busy engaging congregations. We have mission co-worker PowerPoint presentations posted on our website. They're leading church Bible study groups, fellowship groups, participating in worship, and working with youth groups, all virtually. If you're interested in having a mission co-worker visit your congregation virtually, contact our mission personnel office. Global Ministries relates to 50 partners in 16 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. We relate to historic disciples and congregational church partners, ecumenical organizations, theological institutions, college, universities, peace and justice organizations. We have 9 mission co-workers serving in 5 African countries. Through the American Board for Foreign Mission, Global Ministries has related to the Evangelical Congregational Church in Angola since its inception in 1880 as one of the founding churches. I've been blessed to visit Angola 2 times. Both visits were fantastic. IECA epitomizes African hospitality. They organized visits that exposed me to the church's structures and its fruitful ministries. It's been a joy working with the church's leadership. I have been inspired by their transparency, professionalism, and faithfulness to the gospel. They are model partners. Recently, I was contacted to provide an organizational reference for them for a grant that they were applying for. And some of you know that in your capacity, you're often invited to do references, and sometimes you can be a bit hesitant. But I would tell you, in receiving the invitation to provide a reference for IECA, it was a delight. It was not one that I had to struggle with saying nice things in order not to penalize the church. But I could truly speak of positive experiences of working with the church in the ways that they have really exhibited a deep spirituality and a level of professionalism that I have not witnessed in some of the other partnerships I have. I have, in fact, long dreamed of organizing a conference for partners in Africa that would feature EACA's leaders as presenters to share and to teach our partners about their process of submitting proposals and reports, because they are excellent on ways that they nurture and deepen partnerships. Truly, partnership is a priority for EACA, and it's in the very fabric of the church. Last year, my office invited Reverend Kongovi to be my guest at the UCC and DOC biannual meetings. Reverend Kongovi was unable to attend because it conflicted with the church's assembly. He sent Onesimo to represent the church. And Reverend Kongovi, I will report again that Onesimo represented the church well, fully living into the church's values in all venues and presentations. And we all have been very blessed even today to share in his wisdom and to hear from him. He shared in congregations, homes, and to regional bodies. He has deepened the church's witness and relationships in the United States. My office has been involved with EACA in their conversations with the United Congregational Church in Southern Africa as they explore ways that they can participate in ministry together. Both churches have American congregational roots. My office has worked with EACA on development, agriculture, educational, microcredit, and gender empowerment projects. We've also partnered with the church in the theological education of students. I also should note that we have a partnership with the Council of Christian Churches in Angola. We have, together with the council, partner on development, peace, and justice projects. We're currently supporting the council's COVID-19 awareness campaigns across the country. During the global pandemic, partners in Africa are continuing in their transforming ministries, providing services to their communities and sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ. This morning when I looked up the numbers of how COVID-19 is impacting Africa, I learned that 1,065,946 confirmed cases are in Africa. 283,224 active cases, 758,000 have recovered, and a little over 23,000 deaths. Some partners in Africa have experienced many challenges. Some have laid off staff because of the tremendous reduction of financial support because many churches aren't gathering and unemployment has increased. Educational institutions are suffering because they have been forced to stop meeting in person, which has impacted school fees, and most institutions we relate to do not have the infrastructure to support virtual learning. Many pastors are suffering because they are not receiving their salaries because they do not have platforms to receive offerings. Women are carrying the burden of this pandemic. And worldwide, we are witnessing increased cases of gender-based violence. Global ministries continue to support partners in many ways, but we've prioritized support related to COVID-19 awareness campaign and assisting with protective equipment such as masks, hand washing stations, and hand sanitizers. We're also supporting women groups who are making masks for their communities. Partners in Africa have shown their resilience, creativity, and adaptability. They've provided a powerful witness to what is possible when nurtured in faith, prayer, and love. Thank you again, UCC Canada, for this invitation, EACA for your wonderful partnership, and comrades in Christ for your compliment. May God continue to bless us, strengthen, and inspire us for God's mission in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Muito obrigado, Brother Marco, for that presentation and update from our mutual partners, Global Ministries. And just before we listen now to Jean, the Executive Minister for Church and Mission of the United Church of Canada, under which global partnerships fall, is in the house. And I would just like to give him a chance just to greet the participants in this conference. Michael Blair. Hello, Michael.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Sorry. Thanks. Welcome, folks. It's great to see so many familiar faces from Angola. And I am grateful for this opportunity to hear what is happening. So thank you, those of you from IECA, for the privilege of our partnership together, and those who are here representing the Angola Scholarship Fund as well. Joyce, it's good to see you. It's been quite a while. And for others who are participating here, and thank you for joining us, and thanks Jafet for coordinating this. It's good to be able to be together, even though we can't be physically present with each other. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. And now we'll turn to Jean to give us an update from the Angola Memorial Scholarship Fund. Jean, over to you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Japhet. AMSF members really appreciate this opportunity to be part of this conference of reporting and sharing. And we're a pretty small organization compared to the church bodies, but I will give you a few highlights on from our last number of months. So first of all, we are very grateful to Reverend Solberg and the members of his congregation who traveled to Angola in January 2020 for a rich exchange with the Yeka Peregrinos congregation. That is, that they were able at that time to transport all our AMSF 2020 grants. These monies went to the Council of Christian Churches in Angola, their scholarship program, to the Yeka Women's Association education projects, and to the Etta Snow Domestic Sciences School. I should mention that a matching grant for the construction of a chapel school as part of the Keswa Education Outreach Program had already been transported to Keswa in the fall of 2019 through the United Methodist Church Florida Conference volunteers who traveled there. Reverend David Gilchrist, one of the founding members of AMSF, approached Broadview magazine, formerly known as the United Church of Canada Observer, to do an article on the 50th anniversary of AMSF, which occurs this year. The article was published in the May 2020 issue of Broadview, and it featured an early and eminent AMSF scholarship recipient, Dr. Anastasio Sicata, a former Angolan Minister of Health who currently serves on the COVID-19 Advisory Council to the Government of Angola. The spring 2020 issue of the AMSF newsletter featured another eminent AMSF scholarship recipient and former Angolan Minister of Health, Dr. Julia Amukwaya. Her message to AMSF is, quote, AMSF has been a strong partner for us in helping form future leaders, and it is important that the work of AMSF continues so that more young people eager for training can benefit. The AMSF Spring newsletter also contained a retrospective article by Reverend David Gilchrist. He marveled at how the idea of creating a small scholarship fund for young Angolan refugees from donations made in memory of his parents and sister, all missionaries to Angola, who had died in a tragic car accident in Canada while on a mission speaking tour, how this scholarship idea had grown like the proverbial mustard seed. In the past 50 years, close to $4 million in scholarship monies and grants for primary, grassroots, and entrepreneurial education have been donated by North American church groups and by individuals, all touched and inspired by the education efforts of Angolan partner churches and by the courage and determination of young Angolan students. AMSF is grateful for the partnership and solidarity we have experienced in carrying out our work. The United Church of Canada provided an administrative home for AMSF for its first 10 years until AMSF became incorporated as an independent nonprofit. YECA and SICA have been wise and effective partners, guiding us at points of growth and change and supporting our administrative needs with effective communication and reporting. COVID-19 is challenging us to find new ways to follow our vision and our mandate. This includes expanding our use of social media. AMSF volunteers have created a Facebook page and are revamping our website. One of the latest website postings is a Portuguese and an English version of the biography of eminent Ubuntu language scholar, Reverend Henrique Etaungu Daniel, written by his daughter Febe Nana Etaungu and translated into English by AMSF supporter, Professor Emeritus Frank Collins. We are especially grateful for internet communication tools such as email and WhatsApp during COVID-19 lockdown. Reverend Joyce Myers-Brown, who is our AMSF corresponding secretary, and Reverend Kangovi, YECA's Secretary General, have blessed us with an exchange of prayers affirming God's presence with us in this time of crisis. Reverend Joyce is sharing with AMSF some of the postings on YECA's WhatsApp account. This account enables discussion about the church, the community, and the COVID-19 context. Luis Samakumbi was most helpful in facilitating communication between the English-speaking Broadview journalist and the AMSF past scholarship recipients in Angola, whom she needed to interview in the early days of the COVID-19 lockdown. Reverend Joyce has recently been part of a cross-Atlantic prayer grouping, including persons such as Reverend Adelaide Catania, Dr. Judith Chimuma, and Reverend Japheth, in support of Dona Leontina Namuyaka, director of the Ediso Snow School, as Dona Leontina recovers from a health crisis. Surely bonds of solidarity and presence to one another across the ocean bloom in the dry winds of lockdown. AMSF was founded in response to the education support needs of young Angolan refugees displaced by war in Angola, and out of the love and solidarity felt by the Gilchrist family for their Angolan colleagues and friends. And now we are grateful to be part of God's response to the need for support of education programs in Angola during the current pandemic crisis. AMSF will continue to journey with YECA and other church partners in Angola, such as the Methodist, Baptist, and SICA, as we seek to support the building of human capacities through scholarships and church education programs in the coming days, as long as we are able, by God's grace, and also considering the global economic and other challenges induced by COVID-19. Thank you.
Muito obrigado. Thank you very much, Jean, for that wonderful update from the Angola Memorial Scholarship Fund. Just like the global ministries, the United Church of Canada also has a number of partners across the world. And yes, the building has been closed, but the offices have continued to be in touch and to find meaningful ways of accompanying our partners in this very difficult period. Currently, we have about 88 partners scattered in Africa, the Middle East, Latin America, and in the Caribbean. We've been helping our partners to respond to COVID-19, and so we've been busy dealing with a number of proposals. We've had challenges to channel some of the money for already approved proposals to Angola. We have sent the money and the bank has sent it back to us. We've sent it again and the bank has sent it back to us. And we are still trying to investigate how best to navigate this problem, which is neither the cause of UCC nor the cause of IECA. It is more to do with the banking systems between Angola and Canada. They say the money has to be transferred through a bank in the US, and the banks in the US do have sanctions against certain individuals and against certain banks in Angola, and therefore they restrict some money. We explain to them sometimes and they let the money go through. But for this time around, we've really gone back and forth for quite a while. Other partners in Asia and other parts of Africa have received funding for COVID-19 responses, and they have been engaged in helping communities where they live. Yes, just like again our friends in the global ministries, there will be no overseas travel for the rest of this year. And our General Council meeting, which was scheduled to take place next year, General Council 44, has been shifted to 2022. We all do not know what the situation will be fully as COVID-19 challenges are still unfolding. But one thing we are very much sure of is that the resources are dwindling. The resources have dwindled. Be that as it may, the United Church of Canada is still committed to accompany our partners in Angola as we face the future. Now, friends, we would like to open this space in the next few minutes in case we have questions, comments. Instead of going into groups, we will do it in plenary. In case you have questions, comments about any of the things that have been said here, or just responding to the question, what have you heard and where do we go from here? What have you heard and where do we go from here? Any questions, any comments, please feel free. We were 38 participants. We have now remained 31 of us, and we have 29 minutes remaining. And I'm sure we can have a minute for each person to comment or say something. Mike Sobek, do you want to say something? Are you there, Mike?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Reverend Japhet, and especially to Reverend Kengovi and Luis and Onesimu. It's wonderful to hear your current thinking about the state of things there and mending the world. The UCC in the United States hosted a conversation yesterday that involved Alan Busak and Curtis DeYoung. Alan Busak, of course, was very involved in the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. And they talked a lot about the real meaning of reconciliation in the world today. And I just would love to hear what Reverend Kangovi or Luisa or Onesimu have to say about the status of reconciliation, especially as the church addresses it in Angola, because you know, what I have heard from Angolans on the ground is that coming out of the war, even now 18 years later, there really hasn't been a whole lot of reconciliation. There's no official violence, there's no war, but I think the strategy in Angola is perceived to be just kind of like, let's pretend all that didn't happen. So I was wondering, Reverend Kangovi, what your take on that is, reconciliation as an important part of mending the world. You're still muted, Reverend Kangovi.
Thanks. Well, I will start, and my colleagues will add. I believe that the reconciliation is something that takes time to happen, especially if people have been seriously wounded by what happened. In our situation, really, the church has been the institution that is taking reconciliation seriously. We preach about reconciliations, and we also intervene into even political issues, just to say that reconciliation will be the only way for us to have a safe country and also to promote development. Because without reconciliation, there is no cooperation, no dialogue, and nothing can happen when people really are not together. They can't really talk about what they have to do together. We ourselves, as a church, we went through this process because Iyeka was divided by the war. We did not divide ourselves, but the war forced us to be IDPs and refugees somewhere in the country and outside. But in 1991, we came together and we had an assembly. And during this assembly, we tried to understand the situation that our colleagues in the bush outside of the country really face. And we also explained, we were in the government, and this is what we also went through. And by putting all this on the table, we understood each other. Although this kind of reconciliation does not happen at once, but we start building a new community, a Iyeka, which we call, is more a family than an institution. And a family has this characteristic of dialoguing, of discussing, and coming to a common understanding. Well, for the general society in Angola, I think this will take time, because I believe the reconciliation has nothing to do with the political competition, who will rule, who will win elections, and so forth. And when we bring in political issues, really, we find that sometimes campaigns for political aims produce some kind of revisiting those aspects which had already been forgotten. I think we still need to say that so and so is more responsible for what happened than me, while they really fail to understand what was the contribution I made for the situation to become so worse as it was. I think our reconciliation as a Christian reconciliation really starts from there. What is my contribution? And this will help me to understand also the apologies, or maybe what the other side also say. We are still working to make sure that within our church, we are not confusing or confused by political game. And we stand as a church, and this is the way we present ourselves to the society, just showing that this should be a model for getting reconciliation. During Reverend Chipenda's mandate, we really started a program saying building a sustainable peace environment. And we went through provincial areas, just meeting with government, churches, and so forth, just saying what should be the way, the best way for Angola society to reconcile. We have to recognize that some of the problems that we had were not just provoked by ourselves, but because of our our connection with external influences. And we brought communism, we brought capitalism, we brought so many things together. We failed to choose what was the best for us. And we did not discuss it. I believe that my colleagues also have something to say.
Thank you. Brother Louis Samakumbi, do you want to add to what Reverend Kangovi has said on the question of reconciliation?
Yes, thank you very much, Brother Jaffet. Of course, my General Secretary has already summarized what is happening in Angola, but I would just add few words. Number one is that Angola is still at the crossroads situation. Since 2017, with the new leadership of the country, I see that a kind of conversation around reconciliation started by recognizing figures that played a great role, like Reverend Joseph Chipenda, by being recognized by the government for the very first time, and many other leaders who contributed for the, for the peace and reconciliation in Angola. My second and last point is, of course, I see that we still need to have a sacred conversation about radical reconciliation in the country. And I see the church to play a pivotal role in launching this kind of radical conversation on reconciliation. And I see that the Angolan Christian Council of Church can be the body that can be enabled to lead that kind of sacred conversation for a more sustainable and lasting peace in Angola. Over.
Thank you very much indeed. Do we have other questions or comments from other participants in the House? Yes, Joyce.
I just wanted to add to what our brothers just said. Mike mentioned the UCC webinar yesterday with Alan Bosak, Dr. Alan Bosak and Dr. DeYoung. When they talk about radical reconciliation, and this is the subtitle of the book that the two of them have written, Dr. Bosak and Dr. DeYoung, it's radical reconciliation, beyond Christian quietism and beyond political pietism. Mm-hmm. I read the book mainly to find out what he meant by those two terms. They meant by those two terms, but I think it applies to all that brothers Kangovi and Samakumbi are saying about the church's role and about where things are in terms of the government and how we face the government, we in any country, and so on. For radical reconciliation, and the example, of course, they use is South Africa, you need to go beyond quietism, and you need of the church, and you need to go by pietism, empty phrases of the government. I recommend the book highly.
Thank you, Reverend Joyce. Thank you very much. Do we have other questions or comments in the House? Any questions or comments in the House? A lot of wonderful things have been said today. beginning with our devotion where we were reminded that God is in the business of plants, and the leaves of the plants for the healing of the nations. And Louis Samakumbi bringing to us that rich keynote address on the ministry of the church in mending the world, and we've seen it practically in terms of how the churches in Angola are doing that with those 8 pillars that Reverend Kangovi spoke about, and then also what Onesmo mentioned to us in terms of the ministry of DASEP, starting with disaster relief and emergency rehabilitation, planning, organizing, mitigating, preparation, and all that. But also we see the support of the Angola Memorial Scholarship Fund contributing towards mending the world through capacity building, developing scholarships and supporting people. And also what the global ministries and the UCC Canada are doing, partnering, networking, linkages, all for the work of justice, all for the work of dignity. There have been no other questions, friends. I will just give one more round in case you want to say your goodbyes. But I want to say thank you very much for all of you for finding time to be here. Reverend Kangovi and your team, you have done a phenomenal work. This has been very wonderful, bringing us up to speed in terms of what is happening now when the churches have locked their doors. And we have heard today that the church is still on the move. The church is still working and using all forms of spaces to communicate the good news of Jesus Christ and doing social justice ministries. Thank you, Reverend Kangovi and your team. And my colleague, Josh, for helping us with the tech work. My colleague, Josie, thank you very much also for making sure that you keep the notes of this important gathering. And as I said, please, we shall send the compiled notes and the speeches that our colleagues presented during this session. So Onesmo and Reverend Kangovi will send their papers to me, and we'll be able to share them with the participants in here. Do we have any farewell last words before we close?
Yes, we want to thank you very much for organizing this webinar.
Yes.
And for making really this happen and bringing together all our friends. And we know now that we have so many friends from different places in US and UCC. So we are very much happy and we appreciate what happened today.
Thank
you so much, and we will share it with the church as a whole.
Thank you. And colleagues from the UCC and other in the regions that joined, thank you also. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye, friends, and let us be in touch, and let us keep the fire burning even during the COVID-19 period. Bye for now.
Bye.
Blessings, blessings, blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.